Welcome to Ali Fitness Podcast, a weekly production all about bringing health into fitness. With a background in chemical engineering, Thaddeus Owen spent a decade developing pharmaceutical products until he decided that traditional medicine for children was perhaps not the best approach. He then decided to return to nature and work on his own terms. Essentially, he took control of his own biology by becoming a biohacking master. Thaddeus is a certified Bulletproof Coach from the first ever class of coaches, holds a personal training certification, nutrition certification, master's degree in holistic nutrition, and today helps others by experimenting on himself and sharing his experiments and more on his very popular primalhacker.com site. Thaddeus, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ali. Great to be here.
So you've had an interesting journey yourself. Perhaps you can start by sharing with us where you are today and where are you today?
Yeah, so physically I'm coming to you from my standing desk surrounded by nature here in Wisconsin, and I'm on the border of Minnesota and Wisconsin. I work full-time here from my home, both on my own business and as a full-time corporate manager for a large corporation.
So you're not, as many people would think, a full-time biohacker?
Well, I wouldn't say that. I am a full-time biohacker. However, I also have a full-time job, which makes the biohacking that much more interesting. So while I don't have all day long to get up and start doing nothing but biohacking and get rest so I can do more biohacking, I do have both a full-time job and young boys that I raise. However, I am always doing biohacking no matter where I am.
So maybe you can tell us firstly why you went from pharmaceutical products to, I guess, a more natural biohacking way.
Yeah, of course. That's a story that most people tend to fall into, especially back in the 90s when I graduated college. It was very challenging to find the type of career and jobs that are available today. And of course, when I was going to college, the internet was very new, so finding out about things was challenging. So I took a very traditional route. I was always out in nature. So I grew up in central New York, near the Adirondack Mountains, the Finger Lakes, the St. Lawrence River. Spent most of my time outdoors as a kid. And when I went to college, I really had no idea what I wanted to do. My parents didn't work for corporations. They didn't run their own businesses. So I was very limited in what I knew about the world outside of nature. So I went to school for chemical engineering. And during that time, I studied a lot of sustainable and environmental engineering, cleaning up groundwater from contaminated sites and all sorts of things where we were looking at how the natural world is contaminated from chemicals. So I always thought I would use my chemical engineering degree to do exactly that, clean the world up from harmful chemicals. I had always had a passion in food, nutrition, and fitness as well. And so getting out of college, I looked for a job in either cleaning the world up from chemicals or working for a company that made much safer products. Very, very challenging to do at the time in the 90s. And so I ended up working in a very traditional career, developing beauty care products and pharmaceutical products, thinking that at least if I'm developing pharmaceuticals, I'm doing good in the world. And quickly learned that that pathway was not quite for me. So I was standing at the top of a 10,000 gallon batch of children's pharmaceutical product, dumping a brown fiber pack drum with skull and crossbones on it saying poison. It was a carcinogen because of lead. And then I was dumping high fructose corn syrup in there and then a red dye after that. And we put in so much high fructose corn syrup, it was at what's called the laxation point. So the point at which if you have any more high fructose corn syrup during the day, you'll have diarrhea. And so if you drink your pharmaceutical product as a child and eat a red gummy bear or something, you're over the laxation point for the day for high fructose corn syrup. So it was at that point that I could no longer do what I was doing in the pharmaceutical world. And I went back to a whole lot of inner work and personal work and just tried to really determine where I needed to be, and ended up working for another corporation at the time, running a sustainability group. So I was involved on the sustainability team, helping the designers and engineers choose non-toxic products to go in furniture. And then my job is to really advocate for that all over the world for the furniture industry. I immediately moved into that job, as well as transitioned my life to stop going into the corporate headquarters and live a more natural life where I could work from home, therefore work outdoors, get natural sun time, add more movement into my day, and set my work environment up to be much more optimal.
That sounds like a dream. So I guess what I wanted to ask you is the term biohacker is just thrown around randomly these days, and it's sort of got some interesting connotations that go with it. But what I love about what you do is it's not rocket science, and it's not here, buy all these drugs or use all these little instruments to biohack your life. And in fact, it's quite the opposite. So what are some no-brainer biohacks that most people who really care about their health and fitness should implement into their lifestyle if they haven't already?
That's a really good question. And it's so true. Even when I got into biohacking, I went for the gadgets, and it's like, I have to have this, I have to try that. And after all of that and learning all the science that I could, it really comes down to very simple things. You find in the biohacking space, there's so many people that say, what do you wish you knew when you got into biohacking? And they say, I wish I knew how much money I was going to spend. Well, really, if you break everything down, the most simple things you can do are completely free. So number one, and my number one thing that I tell everybody, is getting outside at sunrise or within 30 minutes to 1 hour of sunrise. That is so critical for our health. Getting your sunglasses off, taking your contacts out, your glasses, and getting natural sunlight in our eye. I'm not saying look directly at the sun, but get that natural sunlight in your eye by looking 15 degrees off from the sun, being outdoors surrounded by that natural light with as few clothes as possible, barefoot on the ground. And that alone can improve your health so much if you see more sunrises than not throughout your entire life. So that's my number one. And of course, there are a number of other things, all of them being free, as long as you understand some of the basics. So, I'll give you two more, which is sleep. After getting morning sunshine, sleeping. So most people think it's a badge of honor to have lack of sleep and be running a business all night long or being on social media all night long. But in reality, getting sleep is so critical for you to be productive, for you to be healthy, and for all the rejuvenation benefits that you get during that time. So getting a proper amount of sleep in a properly created room such that the room is dark, there's no LED lights on, you're going to bed at a similar enough time every night, and keeping the room fairly cool. These things all make a massive difference on your health. And then the very last thing, of course, in my opinion, is getting clean water that's free of fluoride and chlorine and chlorinated products. So some sort of filtered water, spring water, whatever you choose, getting that fluoride and chlorine out of your water. So those three things of water, sleep, and morning sunlight are kind of my trifecta of how to maintain optimal health. You can go far beyond that, but those are the critical things everyone can really do, and they're almost always free.
Awesome. So on that third point then, the filtered water, I'm sure you've done ample studies of how you would go about getting that water, or what are the best brands of filters. If you're, say, living in a city and you have general tap water, would you suggest some sort of filtration system, assuming that you say you rent the place and you can't implement something more sophisticated? What would you recommend?
Yeah, 100%. I would say it depends on your financial situation. You can go for fairly inexpensive, which is if you have more time than money. You go to findaspring.com, and findaspring.com will direct you to the nearest local spring. Hopefully there's one near you, and those are almost always free. As long as you have a big enough container, you can get a week or 2 weeks worth of water at the spring for free. Some people have quickly tested those springs so you can know if they're clean of contaminants like things that filter through the ground into the water, like pesticides and herbicides. So that would be something that's completely free. You can just store those water bottles. I know many, many people that do that with great success. The next thing that I would recommend is, of course, if you rent, you can get a countertop reverse osmosis water filter. So I don't recommend anything less than reverse osmosis if you're on city water. Reverse osmosis is the only process I know of besides distillation that will remove fluoride from the water. The carbon filtration, the pure filters, the Brita filters, none of those will actually remove fluoride. And that is very critical for many, many reasons. And so a countertop or an under sink, so under the sink reverse osmosis water filter, they're very affordable. I think the countertop version is somewhere between $150 and $250. And then the under sink is roughly $200 to $400 for that. Even if you're renting, you can have an under sink unit installed most often. You may want to check with whoever you're renting from, but those are very simple. They can be installed by you within, an hour or so, or by a plumber within a half hour. And they're easy to remove and take with you when you leave. So those are what I recommend. There's many brands out there, but my opinion is if you get a reverse osmosis filter and you're adding back trace minerals, so reverse osmosis not only strips the fluoride and the chlorine, but everything, all the good and beneficial minerals are also stripped out. So you're getting water devoid of any minerals. And those minerals can be critical to both maintain alkalinity in your blood. So I'm not talking about alkaline water, but I'm talking about if you're drinking water with no minerals in it, you may have to dump minerals from your body into that water to make biological processes happen. So adding minerals back to your reverse osmosis water is important, but that's definitely what I recommend for people on city water.
That's great. And you mentioned spring water. If we're fortunate enough to be able to get spring water, what would you store that water in?
So there's some debate, Allie, about the best containers. And ideally, you will store it in a container that does not have any chemical contaminants in it. So nothing can leach into the water. And you'll store it in something where ultraviolet light can penetrate so that the ultraviolet light can help keep any viruses and bacteria down to a very bare minimum or even kill all of them. So ultraviolet light kind of sanitizes water. So the problem is glass containers are probably the things that will leach the least. So I tend to prefer glass, and I just put a little plastic cork or a stopper in that, sort of like if you're fermenting wine or beer. For people that are familiar, I use 3 to 5 gallon glass carboys, which you can find for about $25, $30 online, even on Amazon. Or you can use plastic. So plastic allows ultraviolet light to penetrate it, while the glass does not really allow the ultraviolet light to penetrate. So some people will store their water in very large plastic bottles. They also use those because if they drop one, it's not going to smash into a million pieces. They're much lighter, and they allow that ultraviolet light in to sanitize the water if that's needed. You will definitely want to get the least toxic type of plastic, which right now, as far as I know, is either HDPE, high density polyethylene, or polypropylene are kind of, from everything that I've studied, they have the least amount of things in them that are going to impact your water.
Awesome. That's really great. And I guess also like BPA free, or is that overrated now?
No, BPA free is totally necessary. The 2 plastics that I mentioned will be completely free of BPA. BPA is a raw material that you use to make a plastic polymer. And the polymer that is used to create that is polycarbonate, PC. So if you see anything that says PC or polycarbonate, that's made from BPA, and it'll have residual or leftover BPA in it. You also have to watch out for other types of polycarbonates and clear plastics that are made from BPS and BPC, and there's other forms of bisphenol, which is the kind of base unit. They are all just as bad as BPA. So what you really want to do is look for polypropylene or HDPE, and those will not have any of those BPA, BPC, BPS additives in them.
Awesome. That's such great information. And I'm also very interested in your second tip that was about sleep. And you mentioned something interesting that I don't think a lot of people realize about the effects of LED light in relation to circadian rhythm and that sort of thing. Can you tell us a bit more about lights?
Oh, of course. So this is such an important issue. So when you talk about sleep and sleep being the most important, one of the things that wrecks your sleep, and some people have their sleep wrecked where they can't fall asleep, and other people, maybe they're falling asleep, but they wake up after 8 hours and still feel a bit tired or sometimes really tired. And other people just are aging faster and starting to have some issues with either cancer, mitochondrial diseases. What's happening in many cases is you're exposed to the wrong light environment. And LED light, so light emitting diodes are LEDs. We've predominantly switched over from the Edison light bulb, incandescent and halogen, over to these LED lights because of cost. So they use far less energy and they're cheaper. If you replace your entire house with LEDs, it definitely saves you money. So what people are doing wrong is these LED lights, nearly every one of them is based on white and blue light technology. So it's wavelengths of light that are white and blue, and white light contains blue light in it, a lot of blue light. And the blue light is a signal to our body. So most people don't understand that light contains information that tells our body what time of day it is and what it should be doing. So what happens is when we see blue light at night, which has never happened through all of human history, the only things we've ever seen at night are firelight, candlelight, and moonlight, never blue light. The Edison light bulb, the incandescent, has very, very, very little blue light, almost none. And so only in the last 10 years, as we've been installing these LED lights, we have this massive amount of blue light, which tells our body to stop producing melatonin, which is the hormone of sleep, the hormone that is our body's master anti-cancer hormone, and one of the master antioxidants and helps rejuvenate us during sleep. That gets completely eliminated, and you stop producing it for up to 4 hours after exposure to blue light. You should be producing melatonin from sunset, and then it starts to slow down at sunrise when we start producing cortisol. Anytime you produce cortisol, it tells your body to wake up, and cortisol stops melatonin production. When your body sees blue light, it tells it it's morning, wake up, produce cortisol. So if you see blue light from an iPhone, a device, a television, your LED lights that you put in your home, when you see those, your body will think that it is morning and stop producing that melatonin that helps us sleep.
Wow. And I've heard you say that that can even affect you to the point where it might take more than 15 minutes to get back to sleep.
So it is slightly different for each person depending on how light sensitive you are. We know that in every person, when you're exposed to as little as 15 seconds, so you get up in the middle of the night, everything's pitch dark, you turn on the bathroom light for 15 seconds or more, and we know that that will stop melatonin production in a human's body for up to 4 hours. So you may fall back asleep and you may not. Many people are restless and find it hard to sleep because they're blue light toxic. Other people say, oh, well, that doesn't bother me. Well, we still know it's messing up their melatonin. So they might fall asleep, but they won't be getting the benefits of sleep.
So ideally then, let's just start with the bedroom. What type of lights would you put in, or what type of lights have you got in your bedroom?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's one of the questions I get asked the most often is, what do we do? Because there's a number of solutions, and I'll give you a few of them. So number one, quick and easy, anybody can do it. Don't turn the lights on in your bedroom after sunset. It sounds crazy, but it can work even with kids. It just takes some adjusting. So the cheapest, easiest way to go without changing anything in your house is just don't turn the lights on, and instead purchase off Amazon a red LED flashlight or a red LED headlamp. So I know I said LED lights are the ones that are bad, but if you get one with a red light in it, red LED, not white, not blue, not yellow, not orange, but red, you can still read, you can still see everything, you can still get around your house. And so I will often just keep the lights off and use a red flashlight or a red headlamp. Super easy, very inexpensive. So going up from there, you could take an incandescent light and put it inside of a piece of salt so it only glows red and orange. So those salt rock lamps people put next to their beds, I would say are not 100% ideal, but they can be better than other things, and they're very inexpensive, and most people already have lamps there. And then the final way that is something that I have done in my bathroom, my kitchen, and my living room. I have not done it in my bedroom because I use a flashlight in my bedroom, but is taking out some of your light bulbs in your home or putting up lamps in your home with red bulbs. They make red-coated incandescent bulbs for very inexpensive, and they make red LED bulbs with a very specific wavelength of red light that is 100% light in the red wavelength with no blue, no green, no yellow, only red. And so you can just screw those into your light bulbs. You can turn those on at night. I will say, it is very challenging to do any color work under pure red light. So if you're trying to cook, everything is going to look gray. If you're trying to do color work on any other thing, it is going to be very hard. So if you do need to use light at night and you need to use regular light, use incandescent or halogen light. And you're going to use that light after sunset. You must put on a pair of blue light blocking glasses, so at least your eyes are being protected from that.
Awesome. And so you said there's a very specific wavelength for that red light. Is that around like 600, 700, or is it?
The entire spectrum of energy that comes from the sun has a small spectrum of visible light, and they measure visible light in wavelength in nanometers. So basically blue light is, somewhere between 400 and 465 nanometers. Red light is between 600 and about 760 nanometers. So what you look for is a red light on Amazon that has a wavelength that actually lists the wavelength between 600 and 700. The only one that I found two. They tend to call them, grow lights, because some of the plants that grow indoors under hydroponic or other places need red, they need infrared, they need some other colors, and people mix and match different colors of light to help their plants grow the best. So if you find a 660 nanometer or 630 nanometer red light, those are the two that I have found over and over on Amazon. They cost more than a regular light bulb, but they're still well under $20. They're under $15, in fact. You may be able to find it by searching Google for that or Amazon, or we can send a link. So I've got a link to the one that I have bought off Amazon. For whatever reason, when I've talked with other people, they're finding it hard to find that one on Amazon. When they search, it's there, but I can send people the exact name of it so you can look for that actual light if we need to.
Yeah, that'd be great. And in fact, I think I know which one you're referring to. And I wanted to put those in a gymnastics studio that I've got here in Manhattan. But the issue is the photos that we often take don't come out too well. What would you recommend for something like a studio? Because I'm sure you've seen this where you go into a gym or a studio and the lights are just...
The lights are awful.
Aren't they?
This is a real problem. So what happens is you make such a higher amount of free radicals under toxic blue light because anytime our body ever throughout history of man has seen blue light, it is in conjunction with red and infrared light from the sun, always. Red and infrared are the antidote to blue. So we're not saying that ever that blue is bad. It's bad at certain times of the day, and it's bad all by itself at any time of the day. So the gyms have ridiculously bright blue and white lighting with no red and no infrared. So you get quite a huge dump of free radicals on your skin, in your eye, and throughout your body from working out under that type of light. And that can cause more injury than working out under the proper type of light. So my ultimate recommendation, of course, is to use as much natural lighting as possible. And then when you need to light, if you can get away with using, from, I guess, worse to better, an LED light at 2600 Kelvin. So color temperature dictates the wavelength or the color of light that comes out of a light device. So 2600 Kelvin is the closest you can get in an LED light today to have the lowest amount of blue light and a little bit more red light coming out of that. So 2600 Kelvin LED light for a gym, if you already have the fixtures put in there, can be a solution that's not great, but it's better than what most people use. Going up from there, of course, you would want to mix halogen. So halogen typically most mimics the sun. So halogen lighting would be the ideal. It does have a bit of heat, but you can get much more energy efficient halogen lighting than in the past. So if you get energy efficient halogen, better mimics natural sunlight, and it has red and infrared in it. So if you're going to be working out, you want to work out under red and infrared along with the blue. So that would kind of be the ideal solution. And if you've got LED bulbs that you have to put in, I would recommend the lowest blue light LED bulbs and add some infrared and red LED bulbs around the gym. So at least you're putting some of that red and infrared into the gym space. Infrared is invisible. You can't see it. So there will be bulbs that look like they're turned off, but those are the infrared light coming through. Near infrared light is not a heating light. It does not get warm.
And Thaddeus, what about for those listeners who go to a gym and can't control the lights? Would you recommend blue light glasses or...
Absolutely. So I will go to a gym in the winter a couple times a week. I still try to do my workouts outdoors, but it's frankly 20 below zero here sometimes in the winter for weeks at a time. And it's impossible to work out outdoors. And if I would like to get a workout in, what I do, this is what I recommend to others, is absolutely put on a pair of blue light blocking glasses. If you can work out near a window gym, move some of the stuff over there and do that. In addition to the glasses, one of the things most people know about today is that how light impacts the eye. One of the things people haven't thought too much about is how light impacts the skin. So too much blue light on the skin can cause melasma, discoloration of the skin, and we're starting to see much more evidence that it's blue light, not necessarily ultraviolet light, that can cause skin cancer. So that's some of the things I'm continuing to follow up and research on. But that means putting on a baseball hat, putting on your blue light blocking glasses, and covering up your arms and legs. So a long sleeve shirt and maybe a pair of sweatpants or yoga pants or some longer pants so that the least amount of skin is exposed to that blue light. And we know for a fact that every study that's been done on skin cancer shows people that work outdoors or spend the most amount of time outdoors have lower incidence of skin cancer than people that work indoors. And we're attributing that to the toxic nature of blue light on both the eye and the skin.
That also could possibly be linked to vitamin D, couldn't it?
100%. So it's not only the fact that blue light causes much higher incidence of free radical in the body, but the vitamin D, this hormone that is associated with far lower risk of almost all diseases and cancers, is extremely low in people that don't get outside enough, or people that live in a northern climate where even if we were to get outside in the winter in Wisconsin, Minnesota, New York, Pennsylvania, you will not be getting enough UVB, ultraviolet B sunlight to manufacture any vitamin D.
Awesome. And then just one little question about blue light blocking glasses. Can you just save our listeners the pain of trying to work out which ones are actually legitimate and tell us which brand to get?
For sure. There are a few brands that are better than others. I'm talking right now about blue light blocking glasses you would want to wear at night. For the people that sit at a computer all day, that work out in a gym during the day, have no natural light around them, there are some other types of glasses I'll tell you about. But I'm going to just say for nighttime use, we'll go cheaper to more expensive. The two cheapest ones are on Amazon. They're called DeWalt laser glasses. So just like the DeWalt drills and DeWalt hand tools, DeWalt makes a laser glass, pure red. They're about $6.99. They don't look super awesome, but they will block all the blue, all the green, and all the yellow light. All three of those wavelengths can have an impact on your biology at night. Going up from there is the UVEX, UVEX. Type in UVEX blue light blocking glasses. They're also called Skypers, SKYPER. They're about $7.99. They only block blue light, no green or yellow. They're much easier to see out of. When you start blocking more wavelengths of light, it gets harder to see at night. But the UVEX have been used in clinical studies from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute to show that they can prevent your melatonin from being stopped when you're exposed to light. So those two don't look great, but they're perfect if you're going to wear them at home or driving in the car. So that's what I use them for. Working at home, driving in the car, I use those two. If you're going to be going out at night and you don't want to look like you're wearing safety glasses and you want people to think you're a rock star, then I highly recommend Raw Optics, RA and then Optics, and it's rawoptics.io. Matt Blackburn, who's an 18-year-old kid that's been studying this stuff for a year and a half, invented that company after learning all of these things about light that we're talking about. He uses what's called a 550 BPI tint. It's a tint that any optometrist can put on your glasses. So if you wear prescription glasses, you can go to your optometrist and ask him or her to dip your glasses in 550 BPI tint. Might cost you $50, but that will put the blue blocking tint on your glasses. So you'd probably want a separate pair for during the day and those 550 BPI tint for night. So those are the ones that I use as my go-to. There are other brands out there that we have tested using a spectrometer that are very inconsistent in blocking blue light. So things like Swannies. I love the look of Swannies. I love the mission. The glasses from Swannies are very inconsistent in how much blue light they block. They do not block green or yellow light, which are also important. And the final brand that you can use is True Dark from the Biohacked company. So True Dark has a daytime blue light blocker for computer work, like if you're at the gym, and then they have a nighttime called the Twilight or the Night Walker. Those True Dark Twilight glasses block blue, green, and yellow light. So they're a little more expensive, just like the Raw Optics. They're going to cost you between $70 and $120 per glass frames. And if you get your own glasses dipped, or if you purchase something like the $6 DeWalt glasses, then that's the easiest way for most people to begin using blue blockers.
Great. Thank you so much. And which ones do you wear to the gym during the day?
So I personally own 10 pairs of blue blockers just because I've had more than that. I've given many away, but I will test them, try them out. So I carry 2 pairs in my car at any one time. I always have a pair of Swannies in my car in case I forget my Raw Optics. The Swannies are the ones that I'll wear at night if I just completely forget the Raw Optics. But at the gym, I will either wear the True Dark Daywalker or I'll wear the Swannies to the gym. If I'm going to the gym at night, I will wear the Raw Optics, and I keep a second pair of Raw Optics in my car, again, in case I forget or I need to lend out a pair to a friend that either wants to try them out or forgot their glasses. So at night, the 550 BPI tint, so Raw Optics, and during the day, the Swannies or the True Dark Daywalkers.
That's great. And just for our listeners, stick to step 1, 2, and 3 before you worry about what glasses you're going to wear to the gym.
Exactly.
Awesome. Okay. And I can't let you go without talking to you about this, because there's just so much talk today about SARMs, the selective androgen receptor modulators, nootropics, psychedelics, smart drugs. Are you able to give us a bit of a definition of the differences between those four things?
Sure. Absolutely. Okay. So let's start with at least what I remember of your order of SARMs. So SARMs, and you define them for us, they are basically peptides, so pure peptides that have been synthesized in a lab to do a number of things, but they basically selectively bind to androgen receptors. So androgen receptors are things that help us lose fat, gain muscle, and do things that testosterone would do. What they're trying to mimic is they're trying to slightly mimic testosterone or something like an injectable steroid that bodybuilders will use, but without the downsides. So these are typically invented by pharmaceutical companies to help people that are bedridden or have cancer keep lean muscle on without gaining a bunch of fat while they're bedridden or fighting cancer. So that's how they were originally invented. And what we're finding are these peptides don't have the downsides of steroids because they don't bind to all the androgen receptors and create all these negative things that steroids can do. They bind only to the receptors that help with fat loss and muscle gain. And so there's some hormone pathways that they help with, but the theory is that long-term use and any use of them has very few downsides compared to using a steroid. However, I will say there are few long-term studies on SARMs. So long-term use over and over again may not be recommended, and even short-term use, depending on the SARM that you choose, can cause some elevated liver enzymes and shut down your natural production of testosterone. Supposedly, when you come off of those, your testosterone production comes back and your liver enzymes are fine. However, there, again, no long-term studies. So use at your own risk, but many people are using them as bodybuilding type supplements to gain muscle and lose fat. They do work for that. I do have 2 blogs on my erisfit.com website detailing my own experience of gaining 13 to 16 pounds of muscle in 6 weeks with no fat gain using some SARMs. So again, use at your own risk. Some people are using them, no long-term safety. Be careful.
Excellent. We'll link to those blogs and also, of course, all the information that you've given us about the Amazon links. That's very interesting. And so I guess you're saying use with caution. Have you heard much anecdotal evidence apart from your own testing of any negative effects for SARMs?
The only negative effects that I have seen thus far are lowered testosterone after use, anecdotally. So some people reported their testosterone was lower after use, but then 2 months later bounced higher than it was before they had started. I have not seen many other downsides. The only other things that I've read about, the New York Times had an article which I appeared in. That article and some others from other magazines did mention that some SARMs websites are selling SARMs that aren't what they say they are. So either they contain no active ingredient or they contain a different SARM than what they say is in them. So again, just buyer beware.
That's great information. Thank you. And what about nootropics?
Nootropics are often called smart drugs, and essentially there's a difference. Smart drug tends to be prescription, tends to have side effects. A true nootropic tends to be, but isn't necessarily natural and has little to no side effects. Nootropics are any compound that help your brain work faster or more efficiently. They stimulate various neurotransmitters in your brain often that either help produce serotonin or dopamine, things that make you feel really good, or acetylcholine and other things that help send neurotransmitter messages faster or more frequently, and or increase the amount of neurotransmitters in your brain so you can make connections, and basically any thought process can be faster. You can find information faster. So nootropics are all the rage right now on places like Wall Street and Silicon Valley. They're all, for the most part, if you're buying a true nootropic, completely legal, completely over the counter, where smart drugs tend to be more prescription product and you have to buy them from dealers or from India or get a prescription for them. So nootropics are a massive class, everything from medicinal mushrooms like lion's mane or chaga that can help both improve immune function but also improve your thinking processes, to synthetics like the racetam family, aniracetam, Nuapept, phenylparacetam. These types of compounds, some of them lower anxiety and increase the speed at which you can process information and learn information. So those are the nootropics. Most people use them to either get an edge on their peers, learn a whole lot of information really quickly, or just stay really sharp and at the top of their game.
Great. And you've got a good blog on your Primal Hacker site about nootropics as well.
We do. Both Eris and Primal Hacker have a number of articles on different types of nootropics as well as lots on natural nootropics.
And one of which you mentioned a fair bit, and I wanted to ask you about Qualia.
Yeah. So most biohackers, when they experiment with nootropics, are buying bulk white powders over the internet and trying them out. We weigh them out on scales. We put them under our tongue and then we drink them down with some water. Sometimes we add fat to them to make them more soluble. Other times not. That can be really a pain trying to weigh all these white powders out and carry them with us everywhere. And then ensure that we add the right amount of choline to that and other things that help with creating more neurotransmitters. So Qualia was a product by a company called Neurohacker. Neurohacker approached my business partner and I and asked us if we would try their product out before they launched, let them know what they thought. And they were basically an all-in-one nootropic. So it contains a whole bunch of natural nootropics, Chinese adaptogenic herbs, neurovitamins and minerals, and all the support systems to help build more neurons in the brain as you're burning them faster. So we thought, hey, why not try this out? We tried it out. We're very impressed with the results. So you can look at our articles that we wrote, but essentially, I broke the Paleo FX deadlifting record the year that I tried that for the first time. The second year that I tried it for fitness competition, I both scored very well in Spartan racing, and at the Paleo FX next year was number 2 for the overall Real Fit challenge. So I found lots of benefit for both mental enhancement, but also physical enhancement from the Qualia product. And now they have a Qualia Mind product. In all disclosure, we do promote that product, but the only reason we promote it is because we found so much benefit that it was one of those where you absolutely know that it's working. And so we really believe in that product, but we believe in targeted use, not every single day use all the time.
Interesting, because I've actually got the one that you gave me, the Qualia Mind satchel here, and I haven't brought myself to have it yet. I get very affected with any type of drug. Even a Panadol will really take a big effect on me. So I'm scared to use it. I was actually going to have it before the podcast, but I thought I better not, just in case it. So I haven't yet used it. But do you see anyone using any of these and having any bad side effects?
Any nootropic affects people differently. Everyone has different body and brain chemistry. So I will say the first time that I took Qualia, it was too intense for me. It was like I had drank 3 shots of espresso all at once and was a little jittery. And that all went away when I did a little bit of physical exercise. So what I did and what I recommend to most people is Qualia Mind, you take 7 pills as the full dose. It's all one dose all at once. I recommend taking 4, seeing how you feel, then taking 5, then 6, then 7. So never take a full dose all at once unless you really know how you react to different types of supplements. But I always recommend going slower before you move up to the full thing, especially if you might be sensitive. So the downsides that I've seen of people taking these are some people, if they don't have enough choline in their body because they're burning more neurotransmitters called acetylcholine, can get headaches. I've never experienced that with Qualia, but I have definitely experienced that with other nootropics when I did not take enough choline. Other people do get a little bit jittery with Qualia if they use too much. One of my thoughts on the Qualia, both Qualia and Qualia Mind, that I would wish they would change is caffeine. They do add caffeine to it. So if you're sensitive, be aware they contain caffeine. I would love to see a caffeine-free version. And then, the other side effect that I've seen is that some people feel no effect. That can be for a number of reasons. And there's tons of them that you can list, but some of them could just be that you are fully optimized. You're getting enough sunlight. You're not blue light toxic. You've had plenty of sleep, and you just might not need extra help. Some people need more than others. Some people feel the effect more, but almost universally, everyone that I have talked to that's used it, I've met, let's say 20% of people that get no effect. The other 80% feel an effect and really like it.
And Thaddeus, how often would you use it yourself?
I used it for 6 months in a row when I first started using the product. And I wanted to really test it out and see what it was like to be on it for that long. I found really great benefit. I was actually transitioning from individual contributor role at my corporate job to a leadership role. And I needed to learn lots of things really quickly. So at that point, I was using it 5 days on, 2 days off, for 6 months. These days, I will maybe spend 3 or 4 months before I finish a bottle. So I target it to the days when I have to gather a whole bunch of information from journal articles and read through it all. And then I would use it again when I'm trying to compile that information into a blog post. I will also use it before very large presentations that I have to give to really make sure my mind is sharp to recall all the facts and ensure that I'm giving the right information and don't forget anything that I want to present to people.
Right. And then the last, I guess, thing that I wanted to mention was the psychedelics. Where do you think psychedelics can be beneficial for biohackers?
Yeah, I think this is one of the more controversial areas, although becoming more accepted as we hear more and more mainstream documentation of university professors studying psychedelics for very specific purposes. So what I think is psychedelics have a very important role, not just for biohackers, but for all humans and all human consciousness. And I don't say that lightly. And what I want to ensure people don't take away is that they're used recreationally. That is not how you want to use psychedelics. Targeted use of psychedelics for very specific purposes can be extremely powerful and life-changing for many, many people. So we all have heard, hopefully, of Tim Ferriss, who is doing work on psychedelics with Duke University. And what they're doing is finding a way to give somebody a dose of psychedelics and be over PTSD, anxiety, or depression in one session. So I, in the biohacking community, see more people not doing full doses of a psychedelic because you need to really be in the right environment and know what you're doing, but using micro doses. So when we say a microdose, we're talking of 1/10 of a full dose, 10% of a full dose, where you will not get any hallucinogenic effects. You can still drive a vehicle, go to work, etc., based on other people's experience. You can still do these things. And what you're looking for is some people are using them in Silicon Valley to just be more connected, more creative, get an edge on their peers. I do not use them that way, nor do I always recommend people use them that way, although they can be very effective for that. But instead, to target internal psychological work that you feel you need to do. So anxiety, depression, loneliness, there's a whole bunch of things that you can target internally. There's some other things that I can list privately for people if you would like that you can overcome using psychedelics appropriately and at a microdose level. So again, these are illegal substances in most areas, so I don't advocate that people use them. And if anyone does use them, it is definitely use at your own risk and try to do your research to know what you're doing. But I have found extreme benefit in overcoming internal emotional issues, long-term emotional issues that nothing else would work for years and years and years in one session on a very targeted microdose with an intention to go into that session to solve a problem.
For our listeners then, if they felt that they could really relate to that and they had something that they wanted to work on, I know you're not advocating it in any way, where would you recommend that they could do some research about it? Because there's a lot out there on the internet, and I can imagine there's some perhaps not so many good articles to read as well. Where would you say to start in terms of research, or where to get help in that area?
This is one of the challenging things in this case, when more and more people and more mainstream university professors are understanding the benefits, it is still extremely challenging to find good information because of the nature of the legalities. So one place that I've had success finding information in the Twin Cities of Minnesota, there's a psychedelics meetup group, and it's run by a professor from the University of Minnesota, where she is studying psychedelics at the university, and she comes to present very researched information to that meetup group. If you can find a local meetup group or a local professor, so there's plenty of professors at University of Berkeley in California that are running microdose experiments through the university today. On the East Coast, Duke University and Johns Hopkins probably and some others are running some experiments. So if you can find a university professor and have them help you find the literature that you can read and other sources, that's helpful. Also at the University of Minnesota here locally is Dennis McKenna, who's one of the founding fathers of psychedelics. And so information from his references and sites can be very helpful. Other places, there are many Facebook pages, Facebook groups that deal with this. So you can start there, and hopefully they will then lead you to information that's very credible and trustworthy that you can research from there. So those would be my favorite places to look for information.
That's awesome. And Thaddeus, I know Primal Hacker runs retreats. Would potentially on a retreat you delve into sort of microdosing or anything like that, or discussions around that?
Yeah, it can be sensitive for some people. However, we just finished our retreat last night and I'm back at it this morning trying to recover from all the information that was crammed in my head from this retreat. We actually had a really great time learning about EMF and 5G and so many other things. But at upcoming retreats, absolutely, that is a great space where it's a private space. It's a very comfortable space where people can ask those types of questions and we can go into much greater details about user experiences that are much harder to do in a public forum. So I would say at retreats, but also if you're at conferences and you can get some private conversations with people at conferences, you can learn quite a bit there because there's such a large group of people that are very well studied and well researched, and often some PhD and professor types, as well as medical doctors, where you can at least get information from them in a sort of non-public forum.
This is awesome information, Thaddeus. I feel like we've hacked the biohacker here, which is really a great privilege. And Thaddeus, I guess before I ask a very important question that I ask all my guests on the show, is there anything else that you would like to mention for our listeners, a tip or just anything else that you think might be important?
In my mind, really what's important is try not to listen to what everyone else is telling you you should do. When anyone looks at you weird for doing something that you know is healthy, there are so many things that we've all tried that we thought were healthy at one point that we're not. Everyone is still learning. So always be willing to both learn something new every day and be willing to change your mind and your opinion based on new information, and never be afraid to experiment to see how things work for you.
I like that advice. So the question is, do you have a tattoo?
I do not, nor have I ever, and I have no desire to have a tattoo.
Is there any reason?
The reason I don't have one at this point is because I never felt called to get a tattoo. And now that I have learned that tattoos both have toxic ink in them and block our body's ability to absorb sunlight where the tattoo is, for those reasons alone, I will likely never have a tattoo.
I expected an answer similar to that, which is quite good, quite profound. Mind you, I do speak to other healthy biohackers that it's too late. They've already tattooed themselves out over the years. So
exactly. And there's ways you can try to hack that. I would say it's absolutely personal. I have nothing against people that want to get them, but definitely understand what the health impacts are and then make an informed choice.
Excellent. Well, really appreciate your time today. We're going to link to the blogs that you mentioned, as well as the 5G blog that you recently put up. That's really interesting. So we'll link to that and all the Amazon links and everything else, as well as your Instagram where people can find out about your retreat.
Great. Instagram is definitely the number one place to find us. Great.
Thanks again, Thaddeus.
Thank you, Allie. Had a great time.
For all the resources and show notes from today's episode, please go to www.ali.fitness. If you liked today's episode, please show your appreciation by going to iTunes, give us a 5-star review and subscribe.